Okay, we know Expedition 33 won Game of the Year, actually the entire Game Awards. We know it's the most palatable game by far. The only other two games that had even the slightest chance were Silksong and Hades 2. And even Team Cherry straight up gave up. But still, we're gonna go in depth and analyze which game truly deserves the GOTY title. And a good thing is, majority of this video is Game Awards winner proof. So trust me, it's very unbiased. And I get it, placing E33 is this year's trending hobby, and I'm very much guilty of the same accusation, but trust me, it is not as easy as how people make it out to be. It's still gonna be a bloodbath at the top of the mountain, because these titles are all packed to the brim with quality in various aspects. And the good news is there's even more subcategories to better evaluate the top dogs of the year, which is sure to spice things up down below, so please go ahead, comment below if you despise any of my takes. It's gonna be great, so grab a popcorn or any snack of your liking because there's a lot of things to go over. And so without further ado, once again, let's get started with the core aspect of any game. With over 80 hours in, I can safely say that Silksong is genuinely what the peak of the genre looks like. That was a quick switch, huh? I mentioned a polished version of Hollow Knight, but that barely scratches the surface of what Silksong has to offer. The right word here is meatier, a full packaged version. It's way more packed to the brim with content, lots of new locations to explore, lots of new things to find, and find them you will have to. Lots of new upgrades to get, new and improved, and certainly more challenging mobs to fight. Some of the most ridiculous boss battles in all of gaming. Man, Nightmare Grim has nothing on Silksong's bosses. It really is a combination of classic old school and modern types of Metroidvanias that truly works together and elevates his status to the top of the genre. Platforming that is also both satisfying and carpal tunnel inducing, but ultimately fun. Now I want to add an important info. I played the vanilla version of the game, meaning almost everything does double damage, Wreath of Purity goes down real quick, Beast Crest is kinda nerfed because it's buffed now. Some cheesy exploits that are really useful, which trust me I did not even consider once. But holy baloney, with all these changes that they're making now with the newer patches, you wouldn't be wrong to suggest the newer versions are meant for the pussies of the gaming industry. I'm sorry. I've been through a lot, okay? Just cut me some slack. Well, I guess at least now the FromSoft meat writers and Hornet herself wouldn't be wrong in spamming "Get the!" But considering how the game broke Steam servers and shit, it's safe to assume that most people play through the vanilla version of the game. So I suppose most of us are on the same page here because we're all gonna talk about perhaps the most polarizing thing about Silksong. Yes, the difficulty. Some neat side quests to enlarge the journey and keep you occupied, which are mandatory and tied to the main progression by the way. It is overall the pinnacle, complete packaged Metroidvania experience of the decade.
The glaze is crazy right now.
No, I'm not glazing because I gave it a hard time back then. I literally mean it. Not a lot more to add to Expedition 33 other than what I've already said. Its innovative turn-based QTE style gameplay is a much needed breath of fresh air, great mix between turn-based thinking and reflex-driven action gameplay, adding in a great pinch of traversal and story beats to better pace the epic adventure. Now this is where you feel right at home. Kinda literally. Your home is now a $100 million luxury suit, and also everything is shiny and polished to perfection. That is the main keyword here, because Hades 2 pretty much follows the same formula as the first game, with layers upon layers of polish. It pretty much takes all the existing elements and adds in a lot more on top and perfects the whole loop to a T, or loops in this case because there's two different kinds of runs, adding in some much needed variety. Initially, I thought I wanted to split gameplay into subcategories like combat, power up, traversal, and give points to each of them, but it seems really unfair. For example, combat is really easy to compare between the three games, right? Because each of them feature a plethora of combat scenarios, and it's actually one of the major aspects in all of them. But with traversal/platforming, things get really complicated. While platforming is a very integral part of Silksong, you know, getting across the different sections of the map, and a core component in the Metroidvania progression of the core gameplay, E33 hardly has any platforming, if you could even call it that, and exploration/traversal is a lot more cosmetic to help with the game's pacing than being the main focus of the game, right? And Hades practically has none. Technically, you could say the Morning Field has some exploration, but even that is very brief. In the crossroads, you're not gonna be spending a lot of time talking to everyone, triggering every special interactions, buying ashes and allocating arcana cards. All of those happen so fast, you're gonna dump all your points into available power-ups and jump into a run pretty soon. And the gameplay actually just mostly revolves around combat encounters and story progressions, so yeah. I'll still split and talk about each game under different subcategories, but the ultimate point can only go to the game that features the most concise experience, combining all its elements. And this time, I'll avoid giving tiny points so that it doesn't feel like I'm handing out compound W's. And with that being said, let's jump into the combat of each game. Starting with... Combat in Silksong is incredibly agile, and precision plays a huge role in getting your strikes across and, well, in staying alive. And staying alive is basically 80% of the gameplay. I talked something about how you feel at home while comparing it to Hollow Knight, but no. Maybe for like the first 5 hours, which was my total previous playtime, apologies to that, but now I can safely say that the meme about Hollow Knight being just a tutorial to the whole Silksong experience, yep, that's a prophecy. Hornet is generally way faster and agile than the Knight ever was, which in turn means that the enemies have to match your speed, and that they do with near perfection. Almost every enemy moves around constantly, some way faster than others, and almost everyone and everything does a double mass damage this time around, cause why the fuck not? Even the early game fights are pretty insane, but Jesus, mid and late game fights go super hard and gut-wrenching, which brings into debate probably the most heated aspect of Silksong, its difficulty. And I really don't have a concrete answer to the debacle. Cause the truth is, ever since Silksong blew up astronomically, skill gap in its player base is obviously gonna be super wide. You're gonna have people ranging from the most hardcore FromSoft dick riding enthusiasts to the most journalist-coded casuals, and you're also gonna have veterans of Hollow Knight who've done Path of Pain like 300 times and have memorized every single boss patterns. You'll also have the average Metroidvania enthusiast, and of course, basic, average, normal difficulty gamer, and all of that is gonna cause a lot of back and forth within the community, and that is very evident. I myself kind of fall between the average gamer and a Metroidvania veteran kind of person. And so even though I felt the game was pretty difficult and challenging, I really had fun with it and thought it was really fair too. Now, can I speak for the community's backlash or acceptance of the difficulty? Well, I'll try my best. I feel like the concerns of super evasive enemies and tight spots with double mask environment damages are really fair criticism of the game. Contact damage is mostly fine, I feel, but yes, it does get annoying when the entire screen gets filled with little mobs of enemies. But the concerns regarding streamer moment induced difficulty is something that I really do have to agree with, but that's something that has to do with the more exploration side of the game than combat specifically, which we'll talk about in length later. Now, do the bosses have very tiny windows to punishing them? Yes. Does it encourage more of a passive playstyle which kinda renders half of your arsenal useless? Yes. Is the margin of error too low and a single crack in your flow can cost your entire encounter? Yes. Do most bosses reward with absolutely nothing useful when you finally defeat them? Yes. But is it bad game design which results in the combat being unfun? No. I respectfully gotta disagree on that one. The difficulty is a necessary addition that pretty much adds to the theme of the game, which is overcoming impossible odds. It challenges you to learn the inner workings of the game, and of course, the bosses learn all their patterns, faces, their little spawns, rise above the trials and tribulations, and ultimately and when you do just that, you're not gonna care about any rewards that you never got. Just a feeling of standing on top of the dead corpses of those annoying little pieces of shits that were blocking your path is gonna be way more satisfying. Another reason why these bosses feel fair is because you can always take a detour and find yourself some useful upgrades and everything and come back later. And I mean much later, when they're essentially just a walk in the park. This dynamic difficulty, while you can argue that it introduces some insane spikes into the flow of the gameplays, it usually encourages more exploration and trying out different build paths, and you can actually trigger some insane boss skips and unique lore interactions within the world. Except for maybe this annoying piece of shit where the runbacks will most definitely destroy your sanity before you even reach his stinky mouth hole. Most of the bosses I did take head on and felt they were really fun to fight. My favorite boss by far was Widow. She just had the perfect level of difficulty, tricky but adaptable movesets, serving as the gateway into the next act, and Blast, probably my favorite track in the entire game. I don't think I've enjoyed a boss fight this much since Renor, like 2 months ago. Generally, I love the boss encounters in this game, even the Act 3 ones that test the ever-living shit out of you and challenges your patience to the levels of Mountain Peak Buddhism. Arena combats are also a prominent feature in the game's progression, which seems to be one of the top 3 hated things in the game. I think they're really fine, honestly, because once again, they do get much easier once you explore and unlock cooler, more effective tools and abilities. Speaking of which, the crests and tools fundamentally change the way you approach both combat and exploration. They all have their unique ups and downs, their own unique playstyles and methodologies you gotta get accustomed to, and it's always a joy to test out their synergies with the various tools that you've got. That is, if you actually get to find them. Each crest has its own learning curve and playstyle / effective build paths that I think by the time you get to some of the late game crests, you're already done with most of the game. And let's be real, Architect Crest is undeniably top tier with how effective most tools are in dealing with the multi-mob enemies and how small the window of punishing bosses are. It is the quintessential go-to crest for probably most of the entire late game. Now, it isn't the end-all be-all of all crests. I mean, I myself used the Witch crest to defeat one of the Act 3 bosses, and actually the Evolve the Hunter crest to defeat the other two, because I myself prioritize just basic attacks and healing way more than using any of the other skills or tools. And Wanderer is what I use for like most of the game anyways, because it just works. Shaman and Beast definitely lean more to the high risk, high reward type playstyle, and with the latter being buffed recently with newer patches, safe to say that it was pretty suboptimal compared to its current state. But I gotta say, they're very good for what they are. I myself used a mod to do a new game run, starting with both of them early on, and yeah, once you get the hang of them, they're really fun to use. Definitely you can make most of them work and find great success with them if you take your time in learning their individual curves and getting good with each of them. Tool synergy might seem like it offers a wide variety of customization. It does, but also not really. There's always a clear set of combinations that just work infinitely better than others. Well, you can always compensate and make your kit balance and function to your liking, but there's always a clear set of winners. Like, you can never go wrong with Wolf Filaments on Shaman. Like, you'd be an idiot to not use it, because it essentially 5x's your damage output on all spells. Might be wrong with the numbers here. And likewise, you'd also be an idiot to not use Spotted Pouch on Architect. The poison damage stick is a no-brainer to integrate with your damage tools. Speaking of which, with Rip tools, some are very situational while others just work all the time, everywhere, on any crest, any build, any encounter, even while you're doing musical stuff. While the synergies are cool, only a handful of them actually are viable, and when it comes to blue tools, mostly you're gonna opt for long, faster healing and or more silk regeneration / storage, because silk depletion is generally fast and you will be healing a lot. Yellow tools fall more on the side of exploration. Obviously, Combest is always S tier, without it you'll be lost in the echo. It is definitely up there. And the blue dye is always a welcoming addition, but combat specific, I don't know. On some encounters, maybe the grip could be useful. I can't really tell because I've never used anything other than Weight Bell and the dice. So yeah, the original Hollow Knight's quest system was really the Wild West and allowed for way more customization options compared to Silksong, where you will have to take into account the various synergies and the utility options, which is fun to experiment with, but you can and will quickly narrow it down to the ones which are actually useful and much better than the rest of the combination. Which isn't a bad thing, it's still very good, but just something to take into account. Overall, the combat is testing, brutal, but also fair and fun, where you do feel yourself improving or get your new tools to do their jobs and overcome the struggles of Firelum. Difficulty curve is one that is all over the place, yes, but it is also one that you can circumvent in more than one way. But when you put the miserable economy of the game into equation, Yeah, let's just say Farloom is struck by the juicy fangs of capitalism and some other obvious real-world implications and some not so obscure messaging going, which I'll get to towards the end of the video because I gotta spoil a whole lot with that. With a hot new category that's totally not gonna piss anyone off. I don't think Silksong warrants the title of the best Metroidvania combat out there because it really has some valid issues, and I still think Lost Crown is at the top of the genre in terms of combat at least, but it's very close and up there. Moving along. Actually not a lot more to add to E33's combat other than what I've already said, but it has been brought to my attention that this style of combat isn't really an innovative one, nor a game changer in the gaming industry or something, as it is already used in an all-time classic by one of the forefathers of gaming, which is Paper Mario? Okay, wow, the similarities are there. Wait, does that mean Nintendo can now sue Sandfall Interactive too? Oh, they're dying just to do that. With all the nominations that they themselves technically got a handout, being a core member of the Game Awards voting committee and whatnot, they're fuming inside. Okay, real talk, yes, both games have real-time QTEs and player reaction elements in their combat, but E33 vastly improves on it. You have multiple ways to answer enemies' attacks, build paths that can go crazy game-breaking, and have multiple layers of synergies within the party members or with the enemies, because you gotta consider type variations too, right? The similarities are really only present on the blueprint level. The game is generally way more complicated with its RPG elements, and generally E33 feels actually a lot more action-packed than turn-based, and this perfect blend of action focus and traditional turn-based gameplay can only really be felt here on Clair Obscure. Not to mention alternate attack options like free aim, adding a lot more variety and depth on how you can initiate damage dealing and conserve your energy, or just go with the machine gun Verso build and gun blaze your way across the entire canvas. Individual party members' playstyle variety is also a much welcomed addition. You can have the classic tank Mael soaking all the damage, or maximize their potential with crazy void attacks, or build a team around burn damage. Monoco alone offers so much option on customization because he can pretty much transform into any and all Nevron you fight and acquire their juicy feats. Post-game section like the Endless Tower are a much welcomed addition as they allow you to go in and test out just how broken your party members can get. Boss battles usually up the ante into biblical proportions, not just in terms of narrative and cinematics, but also the difficulty and move patterns, where the main key is to learn the patterns and figure out their gimmicks, and then you'll be okay for the most part. And obviously you could go grind some side quests and take on the bosses later on, which does result in some insane game-breaking revelations, which I'll talk about towards the end of the video because we gotta venture into some spoiler territory there. But generally, it is a much needed amp up to the turn-based genre, which is equal parts reaction time based and strategizing, but ultimately very fun and very satisfying to play through. Sorry Nintendo, you'll have to back out on this one considering you're already losing to one of the up and coming smaller guys. Now this is a quintessential upgrade to an already perfect gameplay loop. It literally follows the same game plan of the previous title with a whole lot of new stuff added on top of it. Great thing is, it never feels bloated in any way, and all the new stuff are welcoming additions. All the 6 weapons each come with 4 different aspects, meaning you get around 24 different playstyles. Combine all of that with the different boons from the Olympian gods, you're logged in for one hell of a roguelike experience. Sorry, roguelite experience. Yeah, don't kill me. The run variations in this game is abysmal. It can go from wait, didn't I just go through all of this already? To oh my god, why do I have a jetpack which launches lock-on missiles and has a defensive shield with sonic punch, to all sorts of insane modifications. The game is definitely harder than Hades 1, but you do get accustomed to the maps and enemies pretty soon. Ascension plus Descension adds in great amounts of variety to the already excellent gameplay loop. Essentially doubles the game with streamlined progression. Random encounters are very often and split across multiple numbers of runs, which is a good thing because it keeps the game fresh on the long run. And I don't think this is a hot take at all. Surface runs are just much better than the underground ones. Wait, that's actually a hot take? People love the Chronos runs because it's more balanced? Really? I always thought the Olympian runs had the better visuals, varied level designs and traversals, better boss battles except for maybe Scylla. Overall, better soundtracks, other than of course Scylla, more on that one later. And of course, the feeling of taking the stakes head on, I'll give it a 3 to 4 times extra girth and Then taking on the tagline big bad of the game, oh boy, lots to talk about him in the story section. And also, this isn't a shocking news, but the plot and story progression is heavily tied to the gameplay loop and obviously has much more impact on the overall progression and enjoyment of the game itself, which I should be discussing here, but I'll put it on the story section. Now, if you were to judge the gameplay section based on combat alone, it would still be near impossible, but I think Hades 2 might actually appear a little bit at the top just because of the sheer amount of variety its gameplay loop offers, but we all know it's not gonna be that easy. I did the game a colossal disservice in the first video by brushing off arguably one of Silksong's strongest aspects. Exploration in this game is seamlessly addictive. The game's map is enormous. Farloom is approximately 40% bigger than Hollow Nest and way more denser. The locations are distinct with unique sprawling pathways, lots of hidden nooks and crannies that mostly reward you with unique tools and help further. Their optional quests, which are called wishes, help you get stronger because oh boy, some of these locations are sure to test the patience of even the most skillful of gamers. Silksong's environmental storytelling goes so hard that some of these locations are sure to relay the pain that Hornet herself is going through right into the players' heads. It's a miracle if most players don't lose their sanity going through Bilewater, which is a necessary evil as it greatly balances out the other peaceful and beautiful locations, showcasing how diverse the locational selection of Silksong is. It's always a blast to go meet the NPCs and learn about the region, which combined with the environmental storytelling does so much to fill you in on the details of Farloom, be it how the Citadel affects the lesser beings or the dark secrets of the kingdom relegating to abhorrent experiments conducted on poor souls with the ever so sought after silk of the weavers. Verticality, yes, is obviously visible on the map, but you literally also feel it as you're making the climbs and doing all sorts of platforming to get across, which platforming is super fun with the cool new abilities. Combined with the verticality of the locations, literally makes you feel like Hornet herself. Yeah, this might be the first Pale Weaver type game ever. What, no one caught the donkey reference? Damn, guess I really am reaching that unk status here. Huh. The locations in the game are absolutely stacked that sometimes you could get lost and still arrive at pivotal lore moments or canon boss fights, and other times you could just skip the bosses all the same. Remember how I said that Widow was my entrance into Act 2 and not the literal guardian of the gates of Citadel? Yeah, I really just took the Sinner's Road and skipped the last judge completely, and then I fought her much later in Act 2. She still posed a great challenge, but I took her out pretty quick, and my runbacks to the boss was also very easy coming in from the sands of Karak, which threw me off the loop because I usually hear about how the last judge runback is the second most fucked up in the entire game and whatnot. And those are really cool elements and make the overall game a unique experience to different people, and that's a cool aspect of the game. Now, about the difficulty concerning the hidden items and hidden trap-induced streamer moments.
Where is it? I don't want to like sprint into it. Ah!
Now those are actually fair criticisms, and there's a lot of overlap between them. You see, one of the things that help ease in the difficulty spikes of the game are the upgrades and the powerful tools, and most of them are well hidden. Generally, I love finding them across the hidden places because I'm a prodigy Metroidvania expert, man. I just know how, when, and where the exact upgrades are located. Yeah, I'm just built like that. Mostly because I hit every single wall in sight and dash headfirst into every nook and cranny of the map. Yeah, my gameplay looks like this. And even with my schizo-induced gameplay, I still missed out on a lot of tools and mask upgrades towards the end. And that is where the streamer moment slash...
Did you know that in Silksong?
Did you learn Hollow Knight Silksong?
You definitely missed this small detail in Hollow Knight Silksong.
content comes in. Like I literally would have suffered through hell if it wasn't for this random ass YouTube short telling me that I can get the Wreath of Purity from the putrefied ducks halfway across the map at the northwestern side, which even getting to it is kind of a tricky expedition to go through. No pun intended. I would have literally given up the game on Bilewater if it wasn't for this, because the Sinner's Road almost made me cut my throat out. And the unwarranted traps in the earliest section of the game, especially in Far Fields and Hunter's March, scream clip farming. Like, why are these random benches decide to immediately kill you? Unless if you hit the switch behind the wall, that is, and that's a YouTube short. That's a wrap. Like, come on. There's no lore implications here whatsoever. Now I know that the farm fields generally has a lot of traps set around by Karmelita's gang, but I'm specifically talking about the benches here. Like the benches themselves are just a game element as opposed to having deep lore implications. Look, I'm not complaining about it. It's actually a nice secret touch to strengthen the game's community, aside from the lore discussions and everything. And I myself like it a lot. Hitting all the walls around the edges to find cool stuff is a great feeling, but I think it's still a fair thing to criticize about the game, regardless. Especially when lots of modern Metroidvania recognize these to be annoying to the player and add ways to ease the progress and actually make backtracking a fun experience. To just get ignored and hated because their publisher has manifested generational hate, and it deserved. It's especially extra frustrating when pivotal story progression is often locked behind these hidden sections, and those are hidden with such meticulous detail that most people are just gonna look up on YouTube to get through. Look, it might seem like I'm screeching just to throw shade at Silksong, but no, trust me, I love the exploration, and this is really just a minor nitpick, although pretty fair. And even with all the supposed negatives, it wipes the floor with the other two games in terms of traversal, because those hardly have any, or do they even need it in the first place? But before that, please consider subscribing to the channel and also dropping a like. It really took a toll out of me to get this video out, and I really appreciate all the support. Thank you. I still stand by what I said about E33 before. Traversal is also very good. You get some mild platforming now and then with really good item exploration, which is all done in a way where it feels like you really are exploring these huge open fields of unique biomes, each with their own unique sets of enemies and landforms, giving you the sense of embarking on a grand adventure on this beautiful canvas. And the hub world in this game is like nothing I've ever seen before. It is literally just a miniature version of the entire map, but it's designed in such a way that it amps up the scale of this world and throws it into high heavens. Or yes, I do stand by all of what is said here, but there's one little thing that I failed to mention. All of this is just cosmetic. Like, the map and the locations are pretty vast, and you do get to explore and discover hidden areas, get some cool new goodies, and it is a blast to just fly around the map on SKA and soak in the beauty and grandiose feel of our canvas. But the majority of it is just purely for cosmetic purposes and to better pace the fights with the stories or drops, and also make the optional quests and post-game content feel a lot more engaging. And generally give the expedition feel of while you make it through the story. And it's good for what it offers and doesn't overstay its welcome. As I've said before, there's hardly any exploration and almost zero platforming. Yes, it does have item exploration and resource gathering, but nothing that is even slightly challenging to find. 90% of the time, all the useful resources are just straight up there in front of you. And you also quickly get incantations, which are the witchcrafty and spells that you perform at the crossroads to help with your runs. You get these incantations that make resource gathering just so much simpler. Like, it literally just points you towards the useful goodies. And I genuinely never had a problem with resource allocation because I always found myself with an abundance of the stuff that is needed, be it for new incantations or upgrading Arcana. And the game has this tracker feature that is also really useful gathering resources, harvesting specific crops, or buying specific currency. All in all, the game knows that its main focus is on the combat and the runs themselves, and eases in everything else, which I think is a great choice for the constant action and slower story-driven pacing of the game. And with all the positive showering that I gave Hades 2, it's now time to piss everyone off. Look, Hades 2's core gameplay loop is great, there's no denying that, but another core part of the game experience is the story. And it's one you'd think is easy to separate from the gameplay. Well, yeah, for the most part, but also no. The very nature of the game being a roguelite has put so much hindrances on the Greek mythological aspects of the story and vice versa. Since you're powered by the heavy hitters of said Greek mythology, it kind of fits in an unnerving stench on the whole experience, and even without any of the story tie-ins, the gameplay does feel lacking compared to the other two juggernauts. The other two just feel so much more intense and expansive compared to Hades 2, and the roguelite genre does throw in a good chunk of limitations. And even in its strong suit, which is the combat of the game, there's sometimes too much visual noise, which adds in some artificial difficulty. Sometimes the entire screen just gets filled with yours and your mob's projectiles, and all of that just gets doozy. I'm sorry, Hades 2. Hopefully it all makes sense once we get into the story section, which I think you'll only hate me more. The other two are pretty neck to neck really. They each offer solid experiences overall when it comes to specializing in their own genres or just being unforgettable gaming experiences of the year in general. I really want to give both of them a point here again, but if you strap me to one of those electrocutional chairs like I'm one of Hassan's dogs and you ask me to pick one, it's going to be Silksong. I know you're confused as fuck here. Even with all the criticisms I mentioned before, and also adding a fair flair next to all of them, just the sheer amount of gameplay that the game offers gives it the slight nudge that it needs to take the point, and the perfect blend of exploration, platforming, combat instances, and arena scenarios, plus the memorable boss fights, all pack Silksong up into securing a point here. And I also love how the side missions are part of the main storyline. I know that's something people actually dislike about Silksong, how you gotta do almost all the side stuff to actually progress to the main ending, but I personally love that it encourages you to complete the otherwise easy to ignore side quests, and narrative wise, it's cool that you get acquainted with a lot of these NPCs, making Act 3 that much more impactful. But anyhow, it's time to pull out the next category and get on the bad side of Hades fans. Oh man, where do I even start? Well, why not from the beginning? Hades 2 perhaps offers the best motivation to get hooked on its story. Mainly because of the unwarranted predicament our beloved characters from the first game find themselves in. Right off the bat, as you lose a run and return to your home base, the Crossroads, we're literally greeted with a drawing of our sweet family of the Hades household from the previous game. And Milenoe literally has the saddest self-loathing monologues every time we're looking at them.
You'll find them. And you'll have so much to talk about. Let the longing for them spur you on for now.
Forcing the ever-growing grind and struggle against time itself, a necessity even to our real lives as players. They literally call the action replay brooding. Ooh, dark. And that is probably one of the strongest motives to keep you jumping in and out of runs. And as you're playing through, the story unveils itself. Familiar characters show up and grant you boons and necessary power-ups. Lots of not so familiar ones show up, and you get to know each and every one's stance on the predicament and strengthen your bonds, and get to know how the ongoing war is going on, and their own plights and how we can overthrow them, how to power up yourself and all that, and that's where the good part ends. And so begins the flawed bag of narrative that Hades 2 offers. Okay, there's no way I can even begin to justify my stance on this without spoiling a great chunk of the game's story. Though the nature of the game doesn't really alter the overall narrative, but you've been warned, skip to this part to avoid spoilers, and continue on with Silksong's lore. Yeah, Hades 2's story direction feels so off. It could have been huge and grandiose because you literally are going up against some of the major players from the Greek mythology, but it's all bottled down and held back by the nature of the game itself. More so the roguelite genre, which doesn't really let the narrative evolve into anything meaningful. Let's start with our protagonist, Milenoe. Mel is probably the most saddest creature in the world of Hades, because she misses her family, whom she knows nothing about other than their stature, yes, but also because she's the younger sibling, and oh my god, the pain of the younger sibling being put down is real as here, and one that I can relate to on a spiritual level.
I said you never got to know your brother Zagreus. Fine lad that he was. Determined lad.
Brother, I found him to be quite amusing. How interesting that offspring can be so dissimilar.
Like how to do 7 times the work your Oni-chan was doing and get constantly reminded how cool and badass he is? Hey, I would gas up Zagreus too. After all, his adventures leaving the underworld filled with family issues is the reason Mel even exists. But dude, how do you compare daddy issues to flipping the scales of war on 2 realms? Like my girl is out here literally defying the decree of the fates, not only fighting for her birth / the thing she trained for all her life, but also fighting the war on Olympus because she understands times are crucial. And even though the Olympian gods never really cared about the Hades household, Mel is all about that family.
Lord Uncle Zeus, Queen Hera. It's a pleasure to finally meet you face to face like this, cousin. You play most beautifully. Not intended to make promises on that account, Lord Uncle. Though I shall do everything in my power to ensure Olympus stands. We did it, grandmother. You fought so hard for me. I'll be sure to put in the request with my Lord Uncle Zeus. If you could go ahead and let me pass. It's my pleasure to have been of service to our family, Queen Hera, and to see the wonders of these halls once more.
Might as well call the game Fast and Millennialist.
Not funny, haha.
She's straightforward with how she respects the gods and goes above and beyond the call of duty to help the Olympians. Yes, she goes out of her way to undo the curse placed upon her bloodlines by the Fates themselves, which was probably spurred on by the Olympian gods themselves when they had that little quarrel with Hades back in Hades 1. And hey, now all this reverence and respect towards Olympus and the upholding of family godhood would all be sweet and nice if the game didn't follow the base Greek mythology pretty close. Especially if it never brought mortals into the equation. Yes, the game does begin with Kronos exacting revenge on the Olympians and the Chthonic gods for the sweet act of cutting his body into pieces with his own weapon and locking them all up in different areas of Tartarus. Sweet. Now this alone you could argue is a pretty justified reason for his anger and resentment of the gods, and he tries to argue with Mel about it but fails all the time because man, she's been trained well for this her whole life, to just hate and defeat him all the time. Now, if the narrative would have stopped here and moved on, yes, it would still be bare bones as fuck, but it wouldn't complicate things further, and would have been a classic linear tale. But they had to go and introduce moral gray areas and especially throw in them slimy mortals into pivotal parts of the game's narrative. Historically, the Greek gods haven't had the most positive track record when it comes to the treatment of mortal kind, and Hades 2 does not shy away from that fact. From Arachne's beef with Athena to Prometheus teaming up with Kronos claiming that he's fighting for mortal kind.
When I gave mortals nourishment, the meat they would have sacrificed to you, they needed fire then, and more. But you hoarded all of it. So I saved them, and I'll do it again.
To Kronos himself claiming that his rule over mortal kind was far better for them than the Olympian gods under Zeus and Hera.
You have now seen something of this world. Consider what the gods have wrought. War, famine, betrayal. During my golden age, there were no such concerns.
Prometheus especially is so in the right to stand up against the gods. His lore is so in line with his Greek mythology in that he stole the fire from them to give it to mortals, which was really beneficial to said mortals. But yeah, our king of all gods despised that idea to his core. So what beautiful solution did he come up with?
Your Lord Uncle had me bound to a mountain for eons, so that Itos here could feast upon my flesh for all that time. Itos came round eventually, but Zeus, he never shall.
Yeah, I'm sorry, bro's super justified in his actions and he doesn't even always talk shit to Mel. A lot of times he does respect her perseverance, referring to her as the agent of change. Oh, we'll get to that whole debacle in a bit. But same is true for Arachne. She was and still is a miles better weaver, far better than Hornet, Grandmother Silk, and especially our goddess of wisdom here, Athena, which probably already made her fume inside, but then after showcasing her skills, Arachne had to go and brag about it. And oh, that's a big no-no. Obviously, this added even more flames onto Athena's big head filled with all the wisdom of the world, which alone warrants Arachne to be turned into a spider for the rest of her life. Yeah, really thoughtful judgment laid down by the goddess of wisdom there, totally a righteous act. Following her endeavors from the God of War trilogy, I see. And rightfully so, Arachne despises the Olympians so much for this unjust fate. You can easily catch up on that with the Erebus convos alone. She's visibly distraught when she found out that Mel is risking her life to fight for them on both sides of the world, cause you know, she's family and everything, but still decides to help her out cause Mel has always been a good friend and the stakes are pretty high. But later on, you meet Athena. Mel tries to mend their broken bond and wants to help Arachne, so she pleads Athena to come visit Arachne. I'm sorry, plead? Bitch, you better drag your waist all the way down to Erebus, cause who's the one who ended 2 wars at the same time all by herself? Well, mostly by herself. And when the fateful moment is set up, Arachne puts all their past differences behind and
I'm sorry, Lady Athena. Truly sorry. Sorry that I would debase myself in front of you like this.
I caution you to measure your words with care, Spider. I did not travel all this way to be the object of your ridicule.
I I learned just now that I'll never apologize to you in all sincerity. I'd sooner be a lowly spider till the end of time. And look upon my works. I can still weave better than you.
This moment was so satisfying because we all know how messed up the Greek gods are, and it's nice to see Immortal just stand up and deny their bullshit to their face. And what does Mel have to say about it? She channels her innermost, moist critical.
Turns out you face the consequences of your pride, same as any of us.
I suppose you're right. You really told her off. I still can scarcely believe it. She insulted you. That was short-sighted, certainly. And as I understand, she was quite young. You have our talent, and you even have our pride. I figure, what's one more of our greatest gifts?
Yes, she has to play the ultimate fence-sitter, trying to smooth things over with both of them, kind of leaning in towards the side of the gods. Okay, kind of fair, considering they're your family and your same species and whatnot. And most importantly, we do seek their help to complete the task and whatnot, but her reverence is very toxic. She's kind of spiteful of mortals in a lot of conversations too, talking about them as lesser beings, even though she befriends and seeks to help of all kinds of mortal beings. I guess it's cool if you want to bang one of your mortal friends, but yeah, stand up for the other one that always helps you with some much needed early game armor. Now that's crossing a line. These overpowered gods who think of mortals as nothing more than cattle, filled with a variety of lust, greed, glutton, and all sorts of sinful behavior. Everyone knows of Zeus's infamous sexual acts, which isn't even reserved to just him. Heck, even both protagonists can have multiple partners all at once.
Princess, the issue is we each develop certain feelings for you that, in some cases, can manifest as the kind of envy that Nemesis is committed to punishing.
How do we resolve this? Our feelings mustn't get in our way.
You're busy, not like you were going to devote yourself to one of us, body and soul, like some mortal that doesn't know any better.
Why should I or any of us have to choose? We're gods. If you wish to know me better, wonderful. But please accept that I won't let myself be bound to anyone. Nor would I expect any different from you. Are we clear?
Careful there, Mel. You do not want to end up in the C chair there, along with Sneeko. See, this is where I would like to refer to the game as wanting to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to play God and also be a deep emotional narrative that is ingrained in human values. You know where I'm going with this. Like, there's a reason why we as society despise people pushing these values, and it throws a wrench in most moral interactions, especially Icarus, with all the signs clearly visible and taking into account all the replies that Mel gives when he flies off, all the sighs and the shrugs and everything. It's very obvious that he was meant to be the one, and it's heavily implied that he is partially or totally responsible for her losing an arm, which is obviously a huge freaking deal, but the game keeps it super subtle, even unnoticeable. Why? Because it wants Mel to have her own entire harem of godly love. And she's been around the streets, block. She's been around the block. Kind of like Greek Kratos, huh? Yeah, who knows? She might later settle down in life with just a single partner, which she had also brought divine justice to the Greek pantheon like Kratos did, but hey. Also doesn't help how lax the king and queen of Olympus are at the top of the summit. Why am I, as in the player, controlling Melanoe or Melanoe herself, do all the dirty work going solo against the father of all monsters, while Zeus strikes a couple bolts and heads upstairs and chillin' with Hera and Apollo? So wait, you mean to tell me that the forces of Typhon/Kronos are powerful enough to conquer regions all the way from Tartarus to Mount Olympus plus the summit, but somehow Zeus' palace alone is safe and remains unscathed? Even Melanoe is kinda taken back by this fact and questions about it in one of her convos with Hermes. But yeah, that is conveniently forgotten, and when she meets the top dogs, she's so filled with reverence and respect as usual. With how chillaxed Zeus and Hera are, you'd think they have no pity for the rest of Olympus and choose to protect only their beautiful mountain, which I suppose is par for course with how smug the Olympian gods are in historical lore and how they're actually portrayed here. Also, Mel being full of awe and adoration for the gods doesn't really help. Like, these people pretty much brought these fates upon themselves.
Look, what if this is what we deserve?
We deserve better than this, Nemesis.
And it's not even her fault or bad writing. She really has been brought up this way since basically her birth. And that's where Prometheus comes in once again. See, he's been set up as the Titan of Foresight, someone who has constant knowledge of the future, and he refers to Mel as the Agent of Change, someone who's gonna bring change to present godhood and set things right. And he hammers in a lot of good points on how wrong the Olympian gods are, and Mel herself begins questioning her moral code and goes around seeking approval to the bad things her forefather gods have done. And this is where I want to point out that the characters in this game are actually pretty great and well written. Now I'm saying this because I really cannot throw in a new category for characters alone and hand out points for it, because it would be super unfair for a game like Silksong. There's only so much a guy like Sharma has going for him compared to the likes of even Monoco or Nemesis. So yeah, characters in Hades 2 are actually really likable and pretty well written. It's just that when it comes to actual character development along with story progression, it all takes a huge step back because, well, there's really no development in the story at all. Like, I really like Milena as a character, but the nature of the game being a roguelite doesn't allow for her to grow and make flow-altering decisions, and she's left feeling short of the much better goddess she can be. All her doubts and questions about the cruel treatment of the mortals gets quickly shot down by her fellow Crossroad residents, be it Hecate or even Odysseus himself, who's immortal too, and she's right on track to do the bidding of the gods. Surprisingly, Nemesis actually sides with mortals a lot of times. The Agent of Change was only a catchphrase for by far the most critical aspect of Hades 2, the ending. We have to talk about the true ending of the game, and there's no way I can avoid spoilers on it. So skip this whole ordeal if you don't want the true ending spoiled. Mel's reverence-charged character and narrow-minded upbringing, consisting the trailer tagline "Death to Kronos," does nothing but throw in a big wrench to her character arc, especially with the wholesome multiversal ending that the game throws at you. Now, before y'all start throwing stones at me, I am fully aware of the new updated ending. And I'm also fully aware that they added in some new voice lines and altered a lot of previous ones to actually feel like there's a good build up to the conclusion. And agreed, it's true, because I do like the newer ending a lot, mainly for the build up reason, because it feels a lot more natural than the first version, and Mel finally gets some much needed agency and is recognized for her efforts. Cool. But none of it has anything to do with Kronos throwing in the towel as quickly as he does in both versions. The all-powerful father/grandfather of most, if not all of Olympus, manifestation of fucking time itself, currently the most powerful being in the world of Hades, develops a sweet tender heart after spending some of his precious time with his grandchildren. And that offshoot memory of him playing catch with Milena alone is enough for him to reflect upon all his wrongdoings and fill him up with utter shame. Are we deadass going this route?
Kronos plays catch with little Mel. How cute!
You're telling me that this guy, who's arguably the most powerful titan of all time, this guy who used to rule the entirety of Greece, who was usurped by his children, but then came back with nothing but spite and vengeance, this being, which is time itself, suddenly has to play shame and feel all super guilty because memories from a different timeline is flowing in him? Wait, isn't it time itself? Wouldn't he be the first one to realize alternate realities before Zagreus or Mel even try to alter it somehow? And conveniently enough, the workings of timelines are never elaborated. Like, it seems to go the Avengers route of timeline alteration, but like it also affects other timelines with great precision. How? And then some of the remnant timelines are just left unnoticed, which we should go and like kill and everything. Ugh, it's all a doozy, and intentionally so, of course, because now you can go back and do the same roguelike runs without worrying too much about causing major changes to the plot. And it is totally not satisfying and feels very disappointing. Hades 1 was mostly just a family drama, right? Mostly self-contained between Zag, Hades, Persephone, and involving other members of the House of Hades taking pretty supportive roles, which helps you connect with most, if not all, of the characters in the House of Hades. The Olympians don't really interfere in our family affairs other than blessing you with boons and just stay out of you or Hades' way. While here, everyone is up in everyone else's business because 3 heavy hitters are waging war on 2 fronts and you're literally at the center of it all. being the actual liberator in this case. I know quote-unquote family did help all the way with the first game and they still do now, but as Hades 2 is super ingrained in Greek mythology, wouldn't you expect some Greek Kratos energy here? Especially some of that God of War 3 type shit. But it's alright, I suppose. Even Kratos went through a journey of self-discovery and repentance, so who am I to judge? And it's not bad by any means, it's still a very engaging plotline with some insane amounts of dialogue, with a good amount of humor and good use of familiar characters. And the newer ending along with lead-up changes does help ease in the sudden change of heart and keep the loop going and whatnot. It's just that it is not executed to a good degree, and it just does not hold a candle to the other two games even the slightest, because they're just so good with their storytelling prowess. And with that, I think I've yapped way more than I should have, justifying not giving a point to this one. Time to move on. The lore is strong with this one, and this time around, yes, the story is actually vividly present and not disguised through the cryptic lines, which yes, the lines themselves are pretty tight and the writing is great. It's still got the lore secret storylines weaved up behind, but up front it has a really great story to get you hooked on Farloom. They really do a great job in showcasing the current plight of Farloom, the struggle, and the journeys these poor low-life bucks gotta go through and attain nirvana at the top of the citadel. A grueling ascent indeed, which is filled by faith and hopelessness / lack thereof, and the mystery surrounding Farloom's inner working, its major players and how they're tied to Hornet's own reasons for arriving in the lands, and her journey through the treacherous lands. It's all weaved and unraveled with great care. And the characterization Hornet is handled with the utmost care. I would say she probably has the best character arc out of any characters from the 3 games combined. She literally fits into that meme template, you know, the one that says she doesn't really care about anyone or anything. She only does this for herself and then proceeds to throw herself into danger for everyone else's sake. The one to ignore the plight in front of your eyes, but finding yourself serving the common goal of the greater good just by virtue of kindness. The one to consume all power in the world because of your lineage, but doing the right things by your actions, which in turn leads to catastrophic outcomes because doing good always isn't easy and fruitful, but still persevering and righting what went wrong. It's all so brilliant and super well done. It's concise, to the point, satisfying, and complete. The environmental storytelling combined with the lore bits is still the king. No other Metroidvania does this as good as both the Hollow Knight games. Silksong is definitely no exception, but this time around, it plays well into Hornet's adventure throughout the different areas and her curiosity and observation of the lands, and also elevates her own character growth in that way. It's always fun to interact with a plethora of NPCs to get their perspectives on the plight of Farloom, the haunting threats, the corroding effects left by the Citadel's evil, mysterious silk-based acts, the weaver trades left by her ancestors throughout the lands, and much more. And this is where the
"Did you learn Hollow Knight Silksong?"
slop comes in. And thankfully, this one's of the good kind. The amount of little details and secrets that Team Cherry has stuffed Farloom with is staggering. It has so much more to enrich the already grandiose world of Farloom. And weirdly enough, there's some neat real-world messaging going on. Yeah, exercising free will and not following blind faith. Okay, I wonder what it implies. Nope, I don't want to get political on here. I know that's how you thrive on YouTube these days, but I'm not pretty well equipped to handle that sort of heat. Oh, and the degeneracy of gaming gooners is also spot on. Oh, you really think gamers wouldn't be this down bad for a fictional bug? Well, you haven't been to Nexus mods. No amounts of bleach is washing my memories and my eyes of the things I witnessed in there. Well, oh, you're wondering why I was even there in the first place. Please, you just gotta hold on till the later part of the video. Trust me, there's a really good reason. Please, get all the way off my back on this one for now. The multiple endings are fun, but obviously the penultimate Act 3 ending is by far the most canon one. And hey, the first ending got the gaming Jesus all giddy, so it's good enough for a quick initial run, I suppose.
For $20, 15 hours worth of content is incredible.
But on that side note, I just love everything about Act 3, the clever switch up to the already existing world, and it's all just a big reference to Symphony of the Night. Such a nice touch. Hope I didn't spoil too much. And so wait, there's nothing to criticize here, and we just straight up skipped to E33 and had out the point to Silksong? Obviously not the case, because we all know that Clair Obscure is a juggernaut in terms of storytelling. But before we get into it, I want to take a little detour and talk a bit about the lore of League of Legends. Please stay with me here for a bit. The LoL universe is top 3, well, probably my favorite expansive lore universes of all time. Now yes, one of the reasons is because the lore is vast, but you know the one thing that breathes life into it? Yeah, the actual stories that are being told. That is exactly why Arcane even blew up into this massive entity that can probably even stand on its own and rival its parent video game. The same is true for stories like The Lord of the Rings, Warcraft, Star Wars, and other acclaimed novella type stories in the media. And E33 storytelling and character writing is straight up there. I think my previous take still stands. And Expedition 33 on the other hand could literally be translated into a 3-part epic novel and no one would complain about it. It's on a different scale of storytelling, not only in gaming but fiction in general. Without spoiling too much, it handles multiple high-level concepts with near perfect execution. All the characters are really well written, memorable, and play huge parts in the story. Dialogue is usually top tier with pretty funny moments thrown in between, and it hits hard on the epic adventure nature. And all those points still remain true. E33's storytelling and pacing remain unmatched. But I didn't elaborate on how good the character writing is in this game. But before that, I want to talk about how some comments baited E33 as a game that will have very little longevity in the gaming community and how it'll be forgotten soon, and also added that Silksong will thrive throughout the years because its world is much more dense and filled with all kinds of secret and lore. Yeah, while on the surface it is true, it has been completely debunked with the sheer amount of people making hour-length complete analysis videos, insane character analysis, deep lore dives, heck even people go as far as elaborating the audio logs and detailing the previous expeditions. E33's lore and secrets are massive, and actually there's a lot more depth in it than people let on, and the insane amounts of nauseating horned voice line memes and songs leaves a bad impression on the greater lore and writing of Silksong, giving me a minor taste of how the My Hero Academia fanbase destroyed its reputation. Okay, obviously exaggerated nitpicks there. I mean, Mossbag himself has my deep and sincere gratitude because he goes above and beyond the Call of Duty to justify the Weaver's existence.
Weavers are born with a curse that makes the act of conceiving a child excruciatingly painful, rendering it a near impossible task. I was unable to find any information on if conceiving a child is excruciatingly painful for Labubus, unfortunately. As someone who also finds the act of getting pregnant extremely difficult himself, I relate a lot to the Weavers here.
Good work, soldier. You will be remembered. And there's a good chunk of non-explicit, subtlety-driven character writing in Silksong. And while subtlety is cool, and leaving it up to the players to piece the story together is interesting, it doesn't necessarily mean the storytelling is better than the traditional way games tell stories. Also, the characterization of the main players in E33 stories are just so well done with an insane amount of care. Speaking of which, the ending alone has people debating the right choice for months at this point, arguing whose route is actually the good one, whose is bad, whose choice is selfish, whose is for the greater good, whose is the real one, whose is fake. What even is reality? Is the world of E33 a simulation? Is the Game Awards a simulation? Because all the games are genuinely top tier, right? Who even cares about dishing out 5 of them and just glaze in a single game? The journals are actually great indicators to how well the present and historic lore of Clair Obscure's world is fused with its storytelling. And those do give you a lot of puzzle things to piece together and, you know, say how the core character family drama links up. Now, I'm not saying Silksong is bad in any way. Keeping everyone else other than Hornet mostly just NPCs or higher level NPCs that are sometimes significant actually helps a lot with Silksong's narrative structuring. It's just that E33 is on that SSS plus tier of storytelling with its tight writing, complex characters, and insane world. Straight up there, competing with some of the best stories ever told in fiction. Before I jump into the subject and shower all these games with praise and struggle to pick one, I want to address some dicey metrics I used in the last video regarding the number of people that worked on art assets, of Silksong and E33, because the more I look into it, it's getting real hard to narrow it down. While Ari Gibson is the lead artist of Silksong and probably finalized most of the game's artwork, it's very evident from the credits that the game did have others working on its art and animation department, and this might be just pure speculation. They might have had some outsourced help to polish the game. Hades 2's arts and assets were mostly done internally, led by Supergiant's longtime art lead, Gen Z? Wow, that's sure one unique name to have there, ma'am. But it's speculated that they also did outsource some artists. No info on specific numbers though. And E33 apparently is not the small house, low budget indie project that a lot of people, myself included, made it out to be. Because even though the core studio member consists of around 30 people, the budget for the game is actually around 30 million, give or take, and it's confirmed that the game has outsourced a good chunk of its work, especially art and animation stuff, which rounds up the workforce to around 400 people, more or less, which totally explains the hyper-realistic graphics and insane boss animations. And on the topic of budget, Team Cherry has the Hollow Knight money to keep them going. Supergiant's actually got multiple successful titles under their belt, if not just Hades 1. The E33, as we've talked before, is operating on a pretty sizable budget, so I cannot run with the artist numbers, dev power, or budget on this category. I'm just gonna have to roll back on everything that I said in the previous video. And with that being said, it is literally impossible to pick one out of the three. All these games are jam-packed with high quality visual fidelity. Just about every location in these games looks stellar with the utmost polish, be it Silksong's beautiful mountain fae, majestic halls, or the disgusting, wretched, vile shit stings like Sinner's Roar and Bilewater, or Expedition with its unique biomes like Flying Waters, Serene's Colosseum, to the insane the hub world. And Hades 2, while featuring a beautifully juicy smooth art style, also features these unique locations that diversify the usual close combat scenarios, be it wide landscape sections like the Morning Fields, the Choice Base, Ephra, or my favorite, the Telesea? I thought it was a cool jump ship Kraken location. Not to mention the summit and its monstrous infestations. Choosing the game based on the locational artwork alone is near impossible. And in the same fashion, character and enemy designs are also incredibly well done across all three games. Silksong deserves a lot of praise to turn these little insects into cute, quirky, weird, disgusting, majestic, and abhorrent designs. Yeah, these guys were having way too much fun designing and animating these bugs. 7 years in development heaven? Yeah, totally makes sense. Really, Silksong is probably a great case study on how extreme you can get even with a simplistic art style. Once again, the unhinged elitist community finds a way to make these designs even more unhinged and gooner bait. Clair Obscure's character designs are cool. The main playable characters are mostly just your average conventionally attractive people by design, but the outfit selections combined with all their slick move animations and effects just amps them up into the godlike tier. Other than a few select cutscenes, the outfit selections reflect on the characters almost all the time. And I've talked about the Nevrons before, how they're all distinct to their locations and eerie in a good way. Boss designs along with their over-the-top cinematics, long-winded attacks makes for a great treat. And this is where I should probably start throwing some criticisms. We all know that fully custom animating every facial expression for a game that runs over 40 plus hours with cutscenes clocking 7 hours on a AA budget is a damning task. But we're not gonna make such excuses anymore, and so the stiff and slightly uncanny expressions of the characters need to be called out. And it's noticeable not only in camp interactions, but also in some major cutscenes. Now it's not Mass Effect 3 levels of awfulness. Okay, sorry for even bringing that up. They're not even remotely close. It's handled pretty well for the most part, but I'm gonna have to punch a point down for Clair Obscure on that one. And while Hades does appear a bit lacking with its in-game models, especially the mob enemies, it more than makes up for it with its stunning character portraits. And all these characters are just dashingly tantalizing. Designed with the top-of-the-line meticulous detail with some neat references, and they're all oh so smoking hot. I mean, literally, there's like fire burning from their hands and all. This lady literally has a pot on top of her. But we all know the real ones who completely steal the show. I think one thing that Hades 2 does better than Silksong is the UI. Now, generally, almost all the in-game UI in Hades 2 looks great and well animated with cool little snippets and details and everything, but they also have very smooth in and out transitions, and it's not just the UI, even the level progression has some neat transitions that really adds into the idea of overflowing time into the equation. Now, you could argue that Silksong doesn't really need flashy UI to compensate because it completely delivers with its world and creature designs, but we are comparing overall visuals here, and so it's fair game. By the name of the Radiance and Grandmother Silk, forgive me for I have sinned. I did a huge disservice to the game's soundtrack back then, because this is possibly the most polished and consistent set of OSTs ever. I can only describe it as classical music on steroids, perfectly thematical with the world of Silksong. You know the Weavers and the Citadel abusing Silk? Well, most of the OSTs belt out some insane violin solos and double basses, which are of course string instruments. You see the connection here? Throw in a good measure of choirs, percussion, and of course the classical pianos, and you're in for one hell of a beautiful ride. The soundtracks can go super hardcore, mimicking the balls-to-wall situations you often find yourselves in. And soothing/somber tones, perfect to get totally lost in the echo, as you're also totally lost in Farloom, just about hitting every shaky wall until something shows up and somehow end up on a boss fight. And other soundtracks are just majestic and ethereal, somehow also nostalgic, and really piercing a part of your heart that's been locked in. Yeah, got a bit personal there, huh? Widow's theme is my personal favorite by far, because almost everything about the fight is also perfection, but then you had to drop in this banger that just elevates it to godly proportions. Closely followed by Cut Through, because it actually evolves over the course of the playthrough at different reoccurrences of the track and slaps each time. And version 1 Nyleth is also a very soft, somber tone that has a very close place to my heart. It's a great mix of somber tones and hardcore, fast-paced, hard-hitting orchestral pieces. Silksong totally delivers in the musical department. Of course, how can you forget actual bangers like Choral Drown? And Claw Out Your Eyes? Sometimes I'll just let Scylla finish the tracks, which means I can't kill any of her bandmates, because Supergiant has to show off their signature music tech, which is such a cool detail and a pretty nostalgic one actually, because it really is just a nod to a signature specialty of Supergiant's older games, especially their first breakthrough success Bastion, which is actually one of the few forefathers of indie games, along with Super Meat Boy Binding of Isaac and Braid, that established indie as its own genre. Jesus Christ, I feel old as fuck. This is such a great, neat addition, and one which is far superior to Silksong's needle-in interactions, because in the wise words of Mossbag,
or because 90% of the bugs in this kingdom can't sing for shit,
or follow the beat, or sing in key. Everyone's favorite lesbian mommy? Nope. Hey Orphan Kid, heard your song was competing with Lumiere on Spotify charts? Can you follow the beat now? 0 out of 10, yeah, no one's adopting you, buddy. Okay, real talk, I gotta be honest, Hades perhaps has the weakest OST out of the bunch. While the tracks are neat, they don't really hit that hard to the point where you go back and listen to them on repeat. Personally, I thought the Olympus tracks were much better compared to the Underworld ones, mostly because of the trumpets and the Greek aesthetics probably. Into Tartarus is nice with its stick in time aesthetics. But doesn't really hit half as hard as Out of Tartarus. Kronos' theme I thought was way weaker than Prometheus, solidifying him as the best character from the game again, I suppose. Like I love this portion of Wrath of Heavens. The rest, not so much. And the gooey OSTs are all cool, but ultimately just a nice backdrop to the gameplay and the dialogue, and so I gotta punch Hades 2 down here. The vocal tracks are good though. Speaking of which, I think this is by far the strongest suit of E33. A good amount of tracks do feature some form of vocals, but when the powerful ones pop up featuring lyrics describing the core drama of the game's narrative, it completely hits in the feels. We all know the main ones.
Clair Obscure, trouble de rature, trouvera effet. Clair Obscure, bordé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle.
And of course, who could forget the best boss OST of the decade? He legitimately spoiled the story. My condolences to all the French speakers playing the game. Yeah, you guys were brave. And basically the whole OST is just the wild west of musical genres. While Silksong's OST is concise and very thematical, the limited number of tracks does result in some of them being reused, which kinda takes away their specialty, being used on multiple bosses instead of representing specific bosses. E33 does reuse its OST a second time, but it's done in a fitting late game callback kinda scenario. And while you could argue that E33's full OST list is bloated with too many tracks, it's really not that hard to find playlists consisting of the best hits, the best vocal tracks, all the battle OSTs, all the boss OSTs, all the softer tones, etc. and etc. I think that's a very nitpicking take. All in all, the sheer variety of unique musical numbers featuring a wide variety of genre and throwing in some of the most powerful vocals ever in gaming music history elevates Clair Obscure to the status of the best OST of 2025. This is obviously entirely subjective, Because where do you even draw the line of completion here? Because with a game like Hades, technically every time you start a new run, you are replaying the game essentially. So by default, does it take the point? Because it is pointless to start a new fresh game with nothing unlocked. But also the game does have a main ending and a post-game ending, so do those consider as starting points of replaying the game? Silksong probably has the least replay value because there's really no new game plus or alternate difficulty selections. I mean, if you're the peak form of what can only be described as masochist incarnate, you can start a Steel Soul run and put yourself through immense pain and suffering as you lose hours of progress to a stupid spiky bug from the marrow. But you can argue that it's technically a very hard and long roguelike mode, and by definition, it would make sense. But you know, it's still not very traditional. Speaking of which, E33 easily offers the highest traditional type of replay value, be it with higher difficulties, a new game plus mode, and the RPG variety, which allows for different playstyles and build paths. And also, Clair Obscure storytelling is very much along the lines of shows like Steins Gate, Dark, and Attack on Titan, in that going through it a second or a third time, you're gonna find a lot of hints and clever narrative beats, bringing a better understanding of the game's overall story and add much more enjoyment to the replay value. So easy points to E33? I wanna say yes, but the only game I actually replayed out of the bunch after hitting its end was Silksong. Yeah, immediately too. I dropped in an all crest mod and clocked in around 5 hours already, which I've never done for a video game in over a decade actually. The last game I remember starting a new game right after finishing it was probably Arkham City or Rise of the Tomb Raider, like in 2016 or 17, which is crazy to even think about. So does using a mod lower its authenticity when it comes to replay value? No, it's a single player game, so I doubt anyone would actually give a shit if I use mods here to spice up my next gameplay run. So my ultimate conclusion is, no one really gets a point here. It all comes down to like personal preference and what genre you'd love to play through again. We're all done, and we're now here at the conclusion, and once again the ultimate winner is Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Was there ever any doubt? I mean, people literally call it the Expedition 33 Game Awards featuring other nominees, and that's for a good reason. It really is that once-in-a-lifetime coming of Jesus-type blessing to the gaming industry and the players. In all reality, Silksong and Hades don't even come close. Yeah, Team Jerry are clever to drop out of the Game Awards. Kinda sad that TJ had to hand out something to Silksong to make it feel included. Damn, that was kinda harsh.
See, you guys won!
Wait, what's this? Another category featuring minus points? Oh come on, I'm not gonna get the video done in time before the Game Awards has its celebration. Okay, stop imposing, I'll do it. Actually, other than the story, Hades really has no other major flaw. And it also isn't something that necessarily affects your gameplay experience, and I've already given it a hard time, so I'm not gonna pull a point away from it. Okay, the godforsaken economy of Silksong. The whole land of Farloom seems to be puppeteered by the devil and forsaken to a false god, but hey, that's too spicy of a topic, I suppose. But the evil rulers are also responsible for the greedy fangs of capitalism that the game suffers from, much like our real world. Like this guy has to run like 20 kilometers for a single rosary bead. A single fucking rosary bead. Jesus, I'm glad I gave him the sweet release of death. And just as reality teaches all of us, honest work can only get you so far. Stealing from the poor people, now that works wonders. While it does make sense thematically and lore-wise, it makes the gameplay a tragedy. The grind is super tedious and dying is that much more painful. You really gotta play with a conservative mindset, leading to abuse of the game's autosave feature when you're low on health, and that's gonna break the flow of the game. And I wasn't gonna have any of it, and so for the first time in a very long time, I decided to visit Nexus Mods and download the Rosary cheat.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Look, it's either gonna be this cheat actually helping me enjoy the game, or taking a precious point away and dropping Silksong all the way down to 0 on the list. And so, this cheat saved my life. No rosary to unlock fast travel spots? No worries. Can't buy cool new items from this obvious swindler? No problems. These losers scamming me for items that's probably gonna save their lives? No problem. And the mart came with the equally helpful shard cheats, which I didn't even talk about in the gameplay section, did I? Yes, I would have despised every single combat encounter if I ran out of shards after 3 ties and couldn't use my tools anymore. Like, who even thought this shit was a good idea? Fuck lore accuracy and realism. It's a game about fake bucks, for crying out loud. Holy shit, I feel like I skipped a mountain worth of headache with this cheat. Yeah, Team Cherry might actually just be a bunch of masochists masquerading as game developers. I should really reconsider the gameplay point that I gave to Silksong, but it's fine. It's a single player game, so I don't really care about the unhinged elitist community coming at me. This was the only cheat that I used, and I had so much fun with Silksong anyway, so I'll give it a pass. Expedition 33. Now, E33 has a major flaw with its penultimate final boss. Don't worry about spoilers, it's just a difficulty concerning said boss. The very first time I fought the boss, it was a near impossible battle. I had trouble with their patterns, as well as dealing damage / maintaining AP. Then I did what any normal RPG enjoyer would do. Explored the world, did a lot of side quests, and I gotta say, these late game side quests had a great amount of lore and heartfelt moments to them. I was genuinely surprised. But yeah, I got stronger, learned to better set up my Pictos and abilities, and then challenged the final boss again, and I literally took him out in 4 turns. I'm not kidding. The whole finale was super anticlimactic, only saved by the gut-wrenching ending. There was literally so much narrative build-up to the boss, and for them to just get 4-shot, and even that was because of model switch-ups and story beats breaking up the phases of the fight. I'm sorry, I was literally disappointed with the whole ordeal, and so I'm really gonna have to punch a point down on E33 for this. There. Y'all happy? Jesus. And so, after hours of meticulous calculations, carefully inspecting every single aspect of each game's strengths and weaknesses, and conforming genuinely universal opinions, the real, no-biased, authentic Game of the Year winner of 2025 is... The Gamers. I mean, what more can I say? Look at the scoreboard. They're all tied for GOTY anyways. We just spent like an hour trying to narrow it down. Or was it just me? No matter how you try to spin the wheels, all of this is really just my opinion. Heck, even in this video, I jumped through all sorts of hooplas to tie the scores, where I could have easily pulled some strings and made my favorite game look great. And you can always counter-argue against my Hades 2 story takes, saying it's actually a great achievement to maintain high stakes and consistent narrative, while also trying to fit in the roguelite loop. You could even argue that my Silksong gameplay score is totally invalid because of using cheats and the fact that I pointed out way too many fair criticisms. There is always going to be a good amount of bias with these videos no matter which side of the internet you turn to. I think I tried my best justifying the universal tie here, but you could probably smell some sort of bias. But the truth is, it really doesn't matter, because this really is the year of quality titles. Anywhere you look around, there's just S tier upon S tier games stacked on top of each other. It truly proves that gaming was never dead. I understand, okay, between the insane levels of predatory monetizations and the problematic themes all the online gooners / grifters talk about non-stop to generate traffic, you will be brainwashed to believe that gaming can never go back to its glory days. But here we are. Silksong is the #2 GOTY choice of the people, a game that costs only $20, clocking in an average playtime of over 50 hours, and also features a female buck MC and an explicit gay couple? What? Aw man, is Silksong woke? No. Wait, Hades too? Wait.
You know, it meant a lot to me. The comfort we shared that day. We're in the middle of nowhere with 1 year left to live. What better time to build friendships? I could use some wine though. Making friends is thirsty work.
Wait, Clair Obscure too? Oh, give me a break, man. Get them off the nominees. Give the title to Marvel Rivals again, because Venom's cheek, define gamer energy. Let's fucking go. From the record-breaking 9 awards winning Game of the Year to all the other 5 nominees, to the top Metacritic Games of the Year list, to Dispatch, which is kind of taken up because of timeline overlaps, to the Steam charts, it all screams that gaming was never dead. You just have to look for quality and you'll find it. And all of this truly proves that the true winners of the year are the gamers themselves. The Game Awards is a really cool year-end rewind event that highlights the best the gaming world had to offer. Jeff Keighley and the GDA staff are doing a great job in making the event a grand celebration of the various talents involved in making some of the great games ever made throughout the year. And gamers across all ends of the world and the internet love showering praise on the award-winning titles, enjoy the musical performances, and truck through all of the surprising and not so surprising trailers. Because watching trailers is what most of the Game Awards is. People should realize that while the Game Awards does have a significant weight with its celebrity status and mainstream appeal, its awards don't dictate the ultimate gaming opinion or something. Heck, it doesn't even represent the majority of gamers' opinions, as the people's votes only affect 10% of the chosen awards. I keep joking about it, but it kinda really is an internal cabal type voting system where the ultimate choice is made by Jeff Keighley. Which is kind of a good thing considering the free-to-play gacha gooners flooding the voting sections.
A 100% fan-voted award. This year, the fans selected Wuthering Waves as the winner.
You gotta be kidding me.
Please don't make it a big deal if your favorite game didn't win Game of the Year, because we all won by proxy anyway, just by the sheer amount of quality this year's games offer. Who are we kidding? People are already calling it Industry Plan 33. Like, this is the most palatable title by far, and people are still hating on it because their favorites didn't get the arbitrary Game of the Year award, or like Expedition snatching most of the awards. I mean, I understand that the other games do come close in categories like Best Art and Best RPG. Heck, even I wanted Silksong to win Best Indie because it kind of harbors that indie energy, you know? Technically, quote unquote, but the Silksong community would make you think it's like the Last of Us 2 situation all over again. Like, chill the fuck out. And people want to play favorites so bad that they make E33 look like the next FIFA or Maiden. Like, Jesus Christ. But even if you combine the entire hatred and misery felt by the internet towards E33's win, it wouldn't even come close to what Ubisoft is going through. Imagine making a high-quality Metroidvania and nobody likes it or even played it because the initial trailers weren't well received, and honestly, content creators just magically ignored it, magically stopped backing that game up even though it looked really good. And then a year later, you find that your ex-employees launch a title that is going to win Game of the Year and also get nominated alongside another Metroidvania, all while your company is close to bankruptcy. Jesus. Sometimes the gaming gods ain't never gonna be nice to you, man. Kinda deserved, I suppose, but still.